it really makes me smile to use a machine that's 116 years old to bake my daily bread. And as I do it, what I like to think about is who used this machine first? How many years ago? What was their family like? What was their life like? So that connects me with them, and I really appreciate that. Hi, my name is Ross Miller, and welcome to the Speedwell Garage, Parkton's friendliest Studebaker-Packard workshop. So, I wanted to show you today how to make bread using this 1904 Universal Bread Maker, which won the gold medal at the St. Louis Exposition back in 1904. And it's made by the Landers and Freer Company of New Britain, Connecticut. And it's a handy way to make a large quantity of bread with very little effort. So you can see, you consider that usually the ladies had to make a lot of bread back in those days, and this was a really nice way to make it. This is probably why it won the gold medal. So we're just going to make 5 loaves of molasses whole wheat today. So let me just show you the machine a little bit here. It's basically just a bucket with a dough hook that you turn by hand. So the nice thing is that we can make all the dough without ever having to touch it with our hands. Completely mix it, knead it, and it even raises in the bucket, as you will see. And it's just a tremendous labor saving. So for 5 loaves of bread, we're going to use, if I can get it open, 5-pound bag of flour. Normally I would use bread flour for this, but we're in the middle of a pandemic and you can't always get what you want. Then 2.5 pounds of whole wheat. I measured that out previously. Half a bag. We dump that in.
How exact do you have to be? Not very, right?
Not very exact. It always annoys me when I see recipes in books or on the internet with 27 steps and measure down to the gram and all that. No. In the old days, people just made bread, and it's really quite satisfactory. So for that much flour, that's 7.5 pounds of flour. It gets 2 tablespoons of salt. Sort of, kind of. And normally, when I make bread, I let the bread dough rise all day. I usually make it in the morning and then bake the bread in the evening. But for the purpose of filming, we're going to speed it up a little bit. So normally I would just put 1 teaspoon of yeast in all that flour. And then the bread would be raised by the time I come in from work in the evening. But to speed it up a little bit, we're going to be more generous. We'll give it, say, 2.5. That'll speed it up.
We'll call it 2.5.
One of the secrets to really nice bread is to not use a lot of yeast, but to let it rise for a really long time. And that gives you a nicer texture, it's chewier, and it gives you better flavor as well. Now, to give the little yeast animals something to eat, I put 3-4 tablespoons of sugar in. Probably not really necessary, but it's worked for the last, well, I calculated the other day, I've made bread with this machine slightly over 300 times. Huh. So I sort of have this down by now.
You're almost an expert.
Almost an expert. So then I just mix the dry ingredients together. You can see how difficult this is using this wonderful machine. And then it's time to think about the wet ingredients. For this bread, I really prefer, I like it with some oil in it. It keeps it fresh longer. I generally use olive oil. Oops. And about, well, And that's the end of it. Perfect. 1 cup for 7.5 pounds of flour. That's the end of that. And to give it a real nice flavor and color, I put in molasses also, which probably adds all sorts of nutrients. I usually put in about a third of a cup or so.
Beautiful.
And if you put the oil in first, then the molasses doesn't stick to the cup so bad.
Ah. Cooking tips by Ross.
I'm lazy.
Oh, okay. Again, cooking tips by Ross.
Now you're going to have to follow me over to the sink. Get some hot water going here. We just dump that in. Followed by about 8 cups of warm water. The last 2 I'm going to add as I mix it so I don't make the bread dough too soft. Okay. Now I could stand here and hold this and mix it, but I find it really inconvenient. What I love to do is go over to the steps and make the dough. Just keep that right there. This is a long established tradition here.
At the Miller household.
At the Miller household. And then it's just a matter of doing this.
Doing this.
Just do this. See, different flours respond a little differently. That's why I don't want to put all the water in at one time, because sometimes it just doesn't take as much, and if you just put all the water in at once, you end up with this very soupy dough that's hard to handle, and you won't get the texture in your bread that you want. See, she's forming up into a dough pretty well already. It's sort of dry at the bottom, but it's the moisture is working down. So back in 1904, when this machine came out, you could just imagine that the housewife could put all the ingredients in the bucket and then tell one of the children, go turn that. She's almost done. See, she's forming up a continuous ball of dough here.
And that's what you're looking for?
And that's what you're looking for. It all holds together, it starts to get uniform. One of the other advantages of using less yeast and letting it rise for a long time is it you don't need to knead it quite as much, and you'll still get a nice cohesive dough because it has a long time to coalesce together. And this is pretty well exactly how I like it at this point. It's picked up all the flour off the bottom. It's a nice stiff dough, and we're just gonna let it do its thing till later in the day.
That's where the country music starts to play.
And this machine even came with its own super cool lid that fits over the mechanism. And the beauty of it is you just go away and do something else.
There. Bread.
Okay, get a little light going here. Let's see what's lurking underneath the cover. Da, 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 da.
Ooh.
Ooh, perfect.
Great.
That's exactly how I like to see it. So we'll go ahead and all right. get this ready and put it in the pans. Go flour my surface here. I'm going to turn the dough out onto it. There we go. It was a successful extraction. Don't worry about that later. That is a lot of dough.
Yep. Sure you're not mafia? Yeah, practice petting the kitty there.
So, I'm looking for 5 loaves, each about 2.5 pounds, or thereabouts. I don't use any elaborate procedure for forming the loaves. I just basically roll it over on itself. Tip the ends under, and in the pan it goes. There's no need to grease the pans, it's not going to stick. There's enough, there's not a lot of oil in the dough, but there's enough that to keep it from sticking. Plus there's so little sugar is generally what makes things stick, and there's very little of that in here. Because I'm a lazy guy, I like to minimize labor, so I figure altogether it takes me a little over 20 minutes of actual labor to make 5 loaves of bread with this machine. And you just can't beat that.
Nope.
And even if I buy the good flour, it's a little less than $2 a loaf for very good bread.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Most bread recipes would tell you to let it rise again until doubled in bulk. I never do that. That makes the bread a little too light for my taste and tends toward dryness. I let it basically rest about 10-12 minutes, about the time it takes for the oven to warm up. So I'm going to set the oven to 390. That's the temperature I've found works best in the last 300 and some odd times I've made this. So while that's warming up, the bread will rise ever so slightly and then bang into the oven. I do like to put a pan of water in the bottom of the oven. Put maybe a half-inch of water in this nasty looking pan. It just sits over top of the heating coils and steams a little bit. It gives a nicer crust to the bread without any effort on our part. Okay, I'm going to put this up. All right, and we just let the oven heat up a bit and then we'll bang this in. So the oven has just announced that it's warmed up, so before I put them in I like to slit these. It makes for a more attractive loaf of bread. So you just take your knife. Do some other pattern, you can do double slits, whatever strikes your fancy. It keeps the bread from just plain splitting, which is what it will do otherwise.
Oh, so those split top breads aren't really fancy, are they?
No.
Okay.
This is, it's just easier. And so the oven's warm, 390 degrees. I've found that. It seems an odd temperature, but that's what works the best, I've found. And so in they go. Put them on the top shelf. Just fogged up my glasses, and then the last thing I do right before I close the oven door is I put a half a cup of water on the floor of the oven to make a nice head of steam. And now we wait about 40 minutes and we'll be done. Okay, let's see what we've got.
All right. Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll let that cool a little bit, then we'll have to test it. Let that sit a few minutes and then we'll bust one open.
Mm-hmm. A few minutes yet?
Normally I would just slice it with a thin knife, but while it's still hot, we gotta use a bread knife.
Mm.
I guess there's no putting off the inevitable, is there? Normally I would let it cool longer, but we can't wait because we want immediate gratification.
It's better than social media.
Nice, dense, very, sorry you can't smell it on the video.
Yeah.
Too bad for you.
Yeah.
Get your own 1904 bread machine and go to town. You can find them on the internet. I've bought several of them.
Both replicas and genuines, right?
Replicas and genuines. And then, it's a shame we don't have a smell-o-vision.
I know.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Dude.
Dude.
Actually, the butter tastes just a little tiny bit old.
But when you put old and wild together, that's when you get. That's what the Studebaker and Packer's like. Old and wild.
And the funny thing with the wild grapes, you never know when they're going to come. This year, there's nothing.
Yeah.
Not a single one. Last year, they were everywhere. So, fortunately,
It's delicious.
I made like 15.